Our next session will be focused on innovation-led projects, so kind of where the rubber meets the road, if you will, and primarily engaging universities in other universities besides Cleveland State and besides the ones that you heard from just a moment ago, but how those universities engage with innovation and early stage companies. Particularly, I think the focus is in large part on how those universities engage in the rural areas of Ohio to uncover those innovation opportunities. And then we'll end this session with a discussion with the Eastgate team in Youngstown, Ohio, on smart mobility and connected mobility projects that they are leading as well, and their connections to university, state, and federal partners. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce Russ Mills, who is the Senior Director with the Center for Regional Development at Bowling Green State University.
So I'm Russell Mills, Senior Director of the Center for Regional Development at Bowling Green State University. The approach we're taking, and this is just our center, is taking on really connecting with innovation in the state of Ohio is in one interesting way, which is around workforce development. When Matt and I were talking about this session, I think we bring in a unique perspective to really looking at how we can foster innovation in rural communities through really trying to attract people to those regions to start new enterprises or to work for early stage startup companies in rural communities across Ohio. At BGSU, we have several initiatives underway in the area of innovation, including our Center for Advanced Manufacturing and Logistics with our partners at Owens Community College, the University of Findlay, and some other different initiatives we have around early stage tech transfer in the region as well. But I wanted to highlight our Reimagining Rural Regions program today. So a little bit about our center. We serve 31 counties in Northwest Ohio with a variety of different capacities that we bring in our role as an Economic Development Administration University Center. We do a lot of economic and demographic data analysis visualization, quite a bit of economic development and community development project and grant development. We are a neutral and well-respected convener of public planning processes, including doing several comprehensive economic development strategies across Northwest Ohio. Do quite a bit of work in program evaluation and survey research. And then, I would say the event we're most known for here in Northwest Ohio is our annual State of the Region Conference. We're part of the Ohio Rural Universities program, again, hence a lot of our focus on rural communities with our colleagues at OU, Miami University, and Kent State University. My team, I have a team of 8 professional staff you see there, including Maddie Georgioff-Bennett, who's our Reimagining Rural Regions program manager, who I'll talk about today quite a bit. We also have a team of 8 graduate students, and I always joke with Matt, I feel like half his team were my former students, so I'm getting old as we populate folks around the state. But these are our talented team of MPA and PhD in statistics and data analysis students. And then also our undergraduate students we work with quite a bit, and I'll sort of go into a little detail on sort of their role in our project, and also how they're really helping communities across Northwest Ohio retain and attract talent. So our Reimagining Rural Regions program really started during the pandemic. My team and I, as we were, EDA released an RFP for us, or not an RFP, but notified us university centers that we were, going to be getting additional funding through the CARES Act. And as we sat around and as a team and really thought about how we could best utilize that money, one of the things that became very evident was that the pandemic was going to change the workplace relationship that we see. For many of us in Ohio, right, small and rural communities really do face significant challenges in attracting and retaining workers. Often these communities are pretty good at attracting, large scale manufacturing, or at least in our case in Northwest Ohio, in logistics and manufacturing firms. But attracting and keeping talent has proven to be a much more difficult challenge for our communities. And a lot of that is due now to the fact that the labor markets have changed quite a bit, and that workers often now make decisions where they're going to live, not based solely on where their employment opportunities are. And this is of a particular importance for innovation occupations in particular. But they're really making decisions based on the amenities, assets, and experiences in communities where they feel they can lead an interesting and meaningful life outside of their work life. And our premise was, and still is, the rural communities have a unique opportunity to position themselves to compete for workers in this type of labor market because they have, they have interesting, unique, new amenities that they could really build and enhance on to create, a sense of community where they really haven't focused on that in the past. So our R3 program really focused on three key objectives. The first is really ongoing public engagement and partnership development within communities to build capacity for current and future placemaking projects. Again, this is all really with the goal in mind of workforce development, of attracting and retaining workers in communities. Our second objective was really to develop a comprehensive placemaking strategy for each community that identifies the existing assets or amenities that could be expanded or reimagined, as well as any gaps that the communities may have to really make their physical spaces a better place, but also really to build that civic infrastructure or civic capacity that they need in the long term to really compete in a global market for talent. And then the third objective was really to provide rural communities, and a lot of what I hear, and I know what Jason, my colleague at OU, hears, is a lot of our communities, right? They have great ideas, I think, in a lot of cases. What the missing piece is that initial capacity to get an idea translated into action. And so our idea was to use and provide frankly a unique and I think it's proven out so far for us, a unique and very meaningful educational experience for our BGSU students and staff to assist communities in the beginning while they're implementing these projects early on in their communities to provide them that capacity. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I wanted to, for us, a lot of what we hear about placemaking is really a focus primarily on physical spaces, and that is definitely a major component of how we typically understand placemaking. But for us and our team, we really focus on what we call transformative placemaking, which is not only the physical and built environment, but also looking at building sustainable, healthy, cohesive social environments in our communities, local governance and civic structures that really help communities in the long term position themselves to be more competitive for attracting and retaining talent. So the funding for this program comes from two main sources. One is through our EDA University Center program. We've had a 25-year partnership with OU, Ohio University, through our Rural Universities Consortium and with EDA, serving as a university center for the 31 counties that we cover in Northwest Ohio. And as I mentioned earlier, our CARES Act award provided the initial funding for the R3 program. We also were successful in an application to USDA for a competitive rural development placemaking innovation challenge grant, which is providing 2 years of funding for us to go forward with the R3 program. So how do we select communities for the program? Well, we used USDA's definition of a rural community with 50,000 or less. The community has to, the application has to be led by a local government, a county government, or a nonprofit organization affiliated with the eligible community. And they have to commit to really participating in both the placemaking planning and then also the implementation process, which for us is about a 15-month program that they're committing to over that time. So we're currently in the implementation phase, and I'll go through the process here in a minute, but I just wanted to highlight our first cohort of our 3 communities where we're working. So right now we're working quite a bit in the city of Marysville, the city of Van Wert, and the village of Gibsonburg, which is in Sandusky County up here in Northwest Ohio. And about 2 weeks ago, we announced the selection of our second cohort of our 3 communities. So the city of Mansfield, the city of Bowling Green, and the village of Paulding in Northwest Ohio. So this is our process. So what we're going to be doing is beginning here this summer, we're going to hold kickoff meetings with our second cohort of communities where we identify a very diverse and representative steering committee. One of our big premises with this program is to really try to hear from voices that are typically underrepresented when we're talking about public engagement in communities. So for us, this isn't just the big business owners in a community per se. This could be the folks that are working on innovation in different communities. This could be diverse constituents who typically are not heard from. And one of the key pieces for us is we really like to get engagement from young people on these committees. And I'll talk about how we do that in a minute. What we do then, we have a really robust public engagement process throughout the fall, where we develop a SWOT analysis, we identify potential community projects. We've done every kind of public engagement forum you can think of, everything from using electronic communications and different engagement techniques, to your surveying, to focus groups, to interviews, to public meetings, etc. The whole process here is really guiding the steering committee through that public engagement into selection of 2 to 3 projects that they think will help move the needle in their community in terms of talent attraction and retention. So in the winter, we typically do wrap up our public engagement, and once they've selected a couple different projects, we hold educational sessions for with the community to really provide some examples of how these projects have worked in other communities or what challenges they faced, so that they're prepared for that as we move forward. In the spring, the community finalizes their selection of the 1 to 2 projects that we're going to work on. And then in the summer, our students, our BGSU PACE fellows, and the graduate students who are leading each community's process begin those projects. And that's where we are right now with our first cohort. Bit of our organizational structure, each community is led by one of our professional staff. So myself, Nicole Pfeiffer is my assistant director, and then Ben Hooper and Lisa Lawson are leading, serving as the leads for our communities. Each community has a designated graduate student whose full-time assistantship is to work on really leading the public engagement process in each community. So our graduate students are getting great experience as well. And then they also get great leadership experience in managing and overseeing our undergraduate PACE students. Our graduate students thus far have all been from our public administration program at BGSU, which I think has been a great training ground for them. They really assist our staff on developing and designing our committees, implementing the public engagement, and then also the selection of the projects. They also work with the program manager to recruit and train our undergrad students. So our undergrad students, which I'll talk about here, we selected 6 undergraduate students through a competitive application process. And with the grant funding we have from USDA, we pay them for 16 weeks to go through a training program, sort of like a class environment, where they then learn about topics such as economic and community development, placemaking in the arts, public engagement, surveying and data analysis, and then we give them a crash course on the sort of the placemaking process thus far and the public engagement process for each of the communities that has gone on to date. So there are 2 key deliverables we provide for the communities, and we really think these are beneficial. So one that we're wrapping up right now for all of the first cohort is the development of a placemaking strategic plan for each community. We've done this in the form of an ArcGIS story map, right? So it's not just a static document that might get lost or sit on a shelf, but it's a website, a web portal that can be used to market the community, be used to show how forward-thinking the community is, and then also can be updated as the plans and projects evolve for each community. And then finally, the second deliverable that we do are the projects for each of the communities. So our graduate students and PACE fellows are working with staff to really begin implementation of these projects. Some of the things we're doing, we're doing feasibility studies for co-working and sort of an incubator space in one community. Background research on different grant opportunities, benchmarking best practices and models for what other communities have done, and then finally initial project design. So these are the actual projects that our undergraduate students are working on, and they vary. Again, this is community driven, bottom up. We're not telling them what to focus on. These emerge organically from each of the communities. So one project that's a really great example is we heard from a lot of folks in one community that they really wanted more family friendly community activities, and so we're looking at the viability of a YMCA community recreation center for that community. Also looking at a co-working, a multi-purpose space for catalyzing small technology businesses, but also retail, and also in some cases restaurants, etc. So the projects are as varied as the different communities that we're working in, but they're all really, again, centered around the goal of attracting and retaining talent in rural communities. So if you'd like to find out more about our program, there's our website, and that's our R3 team that we have at the moment, working in communities. And again, our project is really focused quite a bit on talent attraction and retention, and we've seen some dividends being paid already with some of our students that have worked on these projects are actually moving to some of these communities. So that's a great story to be able to tell as well. So thank you.
Yeah, I don't see any initial questions. Thank you, Russ. We'll move on next with Jason Jolley, and we'll take a few questions at the end, I think, at this point. So Jason Jolley is the Associate Dean for Public Strategy and Innovation at Ohio University's main campus in Athens, Ohio.
Well, thank you, Matt, and appreciate being invited to join this panel. So thanks to the folks at Cleveland State University, as well as JobsOhio and our partners at EDA. I knew that I was going to follow Russ, and he would talk a good bit about the work that they do at Bowling Green State University with the EDA University Center, and we are a part of that. So I decided to focus a little bit more heavily on some of our innovation activities here at the school, with a particular focus on Tech Growth Ohio. But let me begin by maybe saying a little bit about how we engage with our communities in the Appalachian region. So the Voinovich School is unique among public affairs or public service schools in that our primary mission is public service to the state of Ohio, with a particular focus on the Appalachian Ohio region. And so we have about a dozen faculty and 90 professional staff at the school. And while we do have academic programs, all of us are 12-month appointments with a particular focus on serving the state and the Appalachian region. So we work on things like water quality and substance use disorder prevention, program evaluation of health programs, a whole suite of things. In the space of what I would refer to as the innovation ecosystem, and we sometimes talk about the entrepreneurial ecosystem with a social entrepreneurship ecosystem. But for this purpose here, I'll use innovation ecosystem. Really, there are three areas where we have a lot of programmatic support. One of them is economic development. And I think you could use the broadest term for economic development here. A lot of it may be supporting traditional economic development activities. Some of it may be more community development, and some of it is business development. Entrepreneurship, we have a robust set of programs, and I'll talk about those. And then really an emerging set of activities around social entrepreneurship and supporting social enterprises that are working not just for profit, but also for public good. We're very fortunate that we've been supported with funding from the U.S. Economic Development Administration, both for our EDA University Center. And again, we are the Rural Universities Consortium University Center, joint with Bowling Green State University. So we work hand in hand with Russ on many of the same types of initiatives. Collectively, we serve, I think, 58 counties now, I hope I have that number right, across the state. Ohio is very unique, and we are very fortunate that we do have two university centers in the state. And of course, this is being presented today, this conference, as part of Cleveland State University's University Center activities. So we are very appreciative of the support that EDA has given the state of Ohio and the considerable coverage that we're able to provide with the three universities across the entire state. We've also been fortunate to receive funding and support through the Appalachian Regional Commission for a variety of programs, including some of our social enterprise programs. And JobsOhio has supported our efforts as well as funding from the state of Ohio. Just a quick overview of some of the programs that we are engaged in currently. Again, I mentioned the EDA University Center. We do a lot of work around the 32 county Appalachian region, and we've added another county or two to our footprint. So technical assistance, direct business support. We do really whatever the communities need with respect to supporting their efforts. We also have something called the Mayor's Partnership for Progress, which is run by my colleague, Mr. Lippett. And there's, I think, about 19 communities that we engage with the Mayor's Partnership for Progress. It continues to grow and expand, but you're bringing together, and I'm going to say large communities, but large for our region, not large for the state, but larger communities like Chillicothe and Athens, along with mayors who maybe represent very small villages, 500-person communities, all to discuss collectively how they might advocate for the region and the region's needs, and to look for common solutions to the problems that they have. One of our big initiatives that we're currently working on is called Rise Ohio, which is the Resilience Initiative for Southeastern and Eastern Ohio. This is a $2.7 million project. It was funded by $2.2 million from USEDA, and we had match support from our state appropriation dollars here at the school and match support from JobsOhio. Our partners on this are our economic development districts, the Buckeye Hills Regional Council and the Ohio Mid-Eastern Governments Association, OMEGA. This project's focused on a couple things. One of them is assisting with the decline of the coal economy, and particularly the closure of the Conesville coal-fired power plant in Coshocton, but also working across both of these economic development districts with opportunity zone support and looking for how we might help communities that have an opportunity zone better plan for economic development outcomes, better plan for potential opportunity zone investments, knowing that even if they're not successful with an opportunity zone investment through a qualifying opportunity zone fund, they will at least be better positioned for more traditional economic development activities. We also have a small business development center that we operate out of the school, which is very unique for a public affairs school. And again, a social enterprise ecosystem team that was funded and set up in large part by the Appalachian Regional Commission. We also received some support from USEDA on a social return on investment methodology that we've been using to help some of the social enterprises understand not just their typical benefits that one might define, but also how do you put a monetary value to some of their social activities and create a social return metric around that. We have a procurement technical assistance center that connects people with federal grant opportunities. We operate, I believe we're in 55 of the 88 counties now, so we have a very large footprint for that, but that's also run out of the school. And then the thing that I'm going to talk about primarily today is Tech Growth Ohio. Tech Growth Ohio is one of the Ohio Third Frontier regional entrepreneurship service providers. It is very unique in that it is the only one that's run as a standalone out of a university. So we're the only university to sponsor and house a program. So it's unique in that the university did make substantial investments to help stand up and continues to make investments in running Tech Growth Ohio. We provide through Tech Growth Ohio entrepreneurship and technology startup assistance in a 19-county region. We also provide sort of this intensive venture development service, seed stage capital and co-investment opportunities, and really focused on talent recruitment and development. One thing I would stress is because we think of this as an ecosystem, sometimes there may be companies that could get assistance through our direct business support where we're helping them with some aspect or another, and then perhaps they flow into the tech growth portfolio, or maybe they don't qualify because they're not tech-led economic development, but we're helping them in some other way. So we have a lot of different buckets and opportunities to help potential entrepreneurs or early stage companies. Since its inception, Tech Growth's had $1 billion of economic impact. If you think of this in terms of company revenue and capital raised, licenses, research grants, they've engaged over 200 entrepreneurs. 850 jobs have been created or retained with an average salary of about $50,000. And they help bring along co-investors in the form of angel funds, VC investors, venture banks, et cetera, including the Ohio Innovation Fund, which was founded by Ohio University and Ohio State, and I should say the Ohio State University, since it's a patent now, the Ohio State University, where both of those respective universities are investing in some of these entrepreneurial activities. I'm not an expert on the Ohio Innovation Fund, but I do know there's been some follow-on universities that have joined it as well. So it's really, I think, a unique demonstration of university collaboration here in Ohio. This is just a graphic that Russ does a much better job than me. I presented a long time with Russ. We've been colleagues. He always has much more exciting slides than I do. But this is one graphic attempt to sort of display, how tech growth is helping entrepreneurs within our region with tech-led economic development. So it does show you a map, so you can kind of get a sense of the service territory, the number of entrepreneurs engaged. And this is updated, I think, annually or at least every 6 months. So some of the numbers here might not exactly match what I showed you out of the slides, but you do get a sense of the scale of the investment, the service territory, and how we're helping some of these early stage entrepreneurs and companies. Of course, the big success story for Tech Growth, and there are a lot of success stories, but the big one is global cooling / Sterling Ultra Cold. And this is a 50,000 square foot manufacturing facility in Southeast Ohio, located in the Plains. Some of you may be familiar with the Plains, which is the hometown of Joe Burrow. And there are about 200 employees that are located in working in this facility that's located in the Plains. And what Sterling Ultra Cold does is they produce ultra low temperature energy efficient freezers. Sterling Ultra Cold was acquired by BioLife Solutions in 2021 for about $235 million. This was the largest exit in the history of Southeastern Ohio and one of the largest in the state. It really represents, I think, a very interesting innovation because it's what is a disruptive technology that has major environmental and energy implications as well as healthcare implications. And so this very ultra low temperature freezer is very inefficient. And from what I've been told, some of the competitors in the market couldn't give away their competing freezers, and you would still lose money even if they gave it away because they're not as energy efficient as this Sterling Ultra Cold freezer. And it's been very instrumental in the storage and distribution of the Pfizer and the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine. So it is a technology that came along at the right time to meet some of our challenges. So just a little bit more about tech growth, and then I'll finish up. What I think is very unique about this global cooling, and global cooling then began to do business as Sterling Ultra Cold and now it's acquired. So I'm going to kind of use these terms interchangeably. But it really shows, I think, the role of higher education and Ohio Third Frontier and being patient capital and creating sustained investment opportunities. It's created a resource in this company that's hiring many people in Appalachia at wages that are much higher than our regional average. And I think it shows a lesson that you can support innovation in rural places with appropriate support. One thing that we like to say about Tech Growth Ohio and its long and successful history here is that our model is the slow yes. When you're working with prospective entrepreneurs, people seeking venture capital, and this is really public venture capital in urban areas, there's often a mile-long line of people who are looking for these investments. And so what often happens is there's a quick no. And people are vetting your request, and then they're going to look for a reason to say no and then move on to the next investment. For us here in Appalachia, we don't have a long line of people looking for that quick yes. So instead, and we certainly don't want to give them a quick no. Instead, what we really work for is that patient yes, and we work with those companies to help them identify the support that they need, the resources they need, the follow-on services they might need, and we kind of help them prepare for that potential investment. In some cases, what this means is Tech Growth has to serve companies that they've ultimately invested in. But it also means at other times that what Tech Growth has done is it has helped companies with looking for capital and investments in other places, even if it means that those companies have not necessarily taken an investment through the Third Frontier. So real quick, I think I actually skipped a slide. I apologize if something stuck. I did want to say something else about Tech Growth. For global cooling, Tech Growth was the first institutional investor in that particular company, and it played a particularly important role in bringing on some of the initial placement of the CEO and other talent acquisitions. So this is just a role that would be different that Tech Growth plays compared to where you might seek venture capital in another place. The other thing that it did is it took the Sterling engine technology, which was not an OU spinout, but had some historic affiliation and development with OU researchers. And some of the interest in the Sterling engine technology originally was about how you might use it for things like industrial air conditioning or other market uses. And what Tech Growth helped to do is take this technology, find a unique market for it, bring on the initial CEO and early talent in the company, and then help not only invest in it themselves, but bring along investors to help it grow to its full potential. So it's really a patient yes and a slow yes model that we have here with Tech Growth that, in my mind, represents one, how you can do innovation in rural places, and also a full recognition that the model that people have in urban areas where there's a much denser market might not work in rural places, and you need to understand the market in which you are working. So my apologies for jumping over that slide, but I didn't want to communicate that. I think Matt said we were going to take questions at the end, so look forward to that, and I hope that we're on time.
Perfect. Thanks, Jason. Yeah, we're doing well on time. And thank you for the great information. So our next presenters are both from the Eastgate organization in Youngstown, Ohio. We have Emil Liszniansky and Stephen Zubyk from Eastgate. So hopefully you gentlemen can present from your machine there. Thank you. And welcome.
Yeah, thank you. You're able to see everything good?
Yep, all good. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm Stephen Zubyk, a transportation engineer here with Eastgate, alongside Emil Liszniansky, our IIJ coordinator. And we work with Eastgate, metropolitan planning organization in the Youngstown urban area. And we do planning work, and we're always happy to do presentations like this to really talk about our initiatives and projects. And one of our big ones going on now is, is the LIVE Zone. LIVE stands for Logistics, Innovation, and Vehicle Electrification. And really this is, this started many years ago, back in 2019 in Lordstown, Ohio. The GM Lordstown plant closed, and that displaced about 1,500 jobs and really affected the workforce in the region and took us from that typical Rust Belt, that steel industry. And really, I think that was what kind of set the change for what we are today, and really looking forward to some advanced manufacturing and logistics and electrification. So you see on there, what we wanted to do with the LIVE Zone is focus on that Lordstown area, but really look at a bigger radius. We looked out 10 miles in each direction. And what you can see on there is it's a perfect location, perfect distribution hub. To the north and to the south, we connect to the lake and the river, great access to the turnpike. Most of the freight's running through here across the country. And we hit on all modes of travel, freight, like I said, close connection to the airport, rail as well, and finally transit. So really a perfect opportunity for us to take a big look, a big initiative. And really with that GM closure, we were fortunate to receive some economic recovery funds. We took those funds, matched them with an Ohio Department of Transportation planning grant, used that money to kind of kick off the LIVE Zone and see what we could do in the area. So some of the little overview on what we're doing, and it's a multi-phase approach. We're currently on phase 1, and we'll talk about those, really the projects and the initiatives that were on phase 1 in a minute here. But really we want to focus on a few things. I mentioned freight and an automated transfer yard and freight circulator, really gets things to where they need to go safely, more effectively. Another one is always looking forward to, what can we do that's new and unique, looking at some clean energy stuff, implementing solar powered electric vehicle charging, taking a look at some in-road charging as well. And then lastly, micro-mobility and really, working on the transit side. I mentioned that 1,500 displaced workforce. We need to find a unique way and a safe way to get everybody to these new jobs. So a few of the things, just to touch on the screen, safety is a real big one. We work closely with JobsOhio, an extension of the Ohio Department of Transportation. And with those automated technologies that they're looking into, the main focus with all those companies is always safety. Today and advancing forward is how can we make those automated technologies safer and make sure there's no injuries, fatalities. Another one to touch on is economic competitiveness. I mentioned on the previous slide how our area that we're studying is really a prime location across the country. But we want to make sure, working with our regional chamber, when we have these large industries, these big businesses that are looking at multiple sites across the country, what sets ours apart? We want to make sure we check all those boxes, a lot of acreage available, and studying the live zone and really through the multiple phases. What can we do to set ourselves apart and advance forward? One last one to touch on is at the bottom, the partnership and collaboration. We work with the local universities, work with Bright Energy, Youngstown Business Incubator. We have this new workforce, this change from the steel industry, the Rust Belt industry. There's going to be all kinds of new jobs, new technologies. How can we train the current workforce and train the future workforce to fill these jobs and really do it safely? Like I mentioned previously, also working with the Ohio Department of Transportation. Really from the beginning, it's a planning initiative through their program, and they've been supportive along the way. And as always, working with the locals. We know that these are some major changes for the community, some major changes, to the land use. So making sure that we're working, and us as a planning agency, we're used to working on the private public partnerships. So doing a good job with that moving forward. So I'll let Emil now talk a little bit about, what our achievements are to date, a little bit about phase one and some challenges we have moving forward.
Thanks, Stephen. So as far as achievements to date, the big thing has been a ODOT statewide planning and research grant for $400,000. And that's helping us get this project really off the ground, confirm technical feasibility, and solidify our project scope. So when we go and come to the feds for a funding request to get this shovels in the ground built, we need to have that level of project readiness they expect. So that process began last fall and is nearing completion this summer. It's had extensive stakeholder outreach and collaboration, and the study is being conducted by Michael Baker International, a national engineering firm not far down the road based out of Pittsburgh that's been a huge resource for us. With that study in hand, again, funded through a partnership with Ohio DOT and Drive Ohio, we are requesting a $25 million US DOT RAISE grant. This was formerly the Build and Tiger programs over different administrations. But this would help us implement phase one for the project. We were actually just down in DC advocating for this a few weeks ago with the regional chamber, had a chance to sit with DOT leadership, and a small group made it into the White House to actually talk about this very project. So we're really hoping that project is awarded funding. It's under review now. Some of the next steps moving forward are some of our partnerships. One of them that's very exciting on the innovation side is with a group called Aspire, and that stands for Advancing Sustainability Through Powered Infrastructure for Roadway Electrification. And that's a consortium of universities that includes Utah State University, Purdue, and the University of Colorado Boulder. And they're looking at deploying electric vehicle charging in roadways dynamically and statically that is wireless. So actually a vehicle drives down the road and gets recharged and powered as it's driving. And this is really cutting edge stuff, but it's already been deployed overseas in Europe. And there's several pilot projects across the country right now, like ours, where this is being considered. So we actually met with representatives from the PA Turnpike and Ohio Turnpike just a few weeks back to discuss a pilot project here at our location near the PA-Ohio border. So we're very excited about that piece and kind of looking at those future-focused technologies and all the economic development, entrepreneurship that will go along with that. Another partnership underway is the Ohio Turnpike and Infrastructure Commission has partnered with a group called the Ray, a nonprofit out of Georgia, for a request for proposals for solar development of charging in the excess right-of-way that the Turnpike has. So that's something where there's a toll plaza and service plaza not far from the Pennsylvania border here on the Ohio side that we're going to be looking to install solar panels that can be used for powering infrastructure. Things like the solar array can be used for station lighting, power, and overhead lighting, toll collection devices. So we're very excited about that. Just to look at a quick overview of phase one of this project, schematically, we are in an area, as Stephen mentioned, of the crossroads of two national freight routes with Interstate 80 and Interstate 76. And we also have both Norfolk Southern and CSX National Freight Railroad connections in this area. So some of the highlights of the project include a smart corridor, similar to what you might have heard around down in the Columbus area on US 33, but this would be more of a last mile from the freeway to different manufacturers and distribution facilities in the area. And when we talk about a smart corridor, we're talking about things like advanced vehicle communications, fiber optic, wireless roadside devices, smart vehicle charging. We're also going to have a breakdown yard for triple trailers that are on the Ohio Turnpike. Ohio Turnpike is one of several roads in the country where triple trailers can legally travel, but those need to be broken down before they go on the local miles, local roadways or last miles. So there'll be a lot there where these electric trucks can recharge, and there can be some automation as the trailers are broken down. We also show a solar field. We're certainly looking to be progressive here, and as we electrify our infrastructure, we want to have a clean energy source to help with the climate mitigation efforts underway federally. And last but not least, transit is an important piece of this. We're at basically mostly a greenfield location on the fringe of our urban area. So we need to be able to get people and workforce housing connected to these sites. So we're looking at automated long-haul transit from our transit center in downtown Youngstown out a 20-minute drive here to a smart last mile mobility circulator. So just to briefly touch on some of the challenges we faced to date deploying this technology and innovation. One thing is just how quickly technology is changing in this sphere, particularly when it comes to smart logistics and electrification. We've had a lot of really smart people in the room from universities, private enterprise, and they've all been telling us, things are changing quickly. We have to be agnostic with respect to our communication platforms, what type of technology we're deploying, and what type of charging equipment. Those specifications are always changing. So right now it's critical for us as we're in the early phases to kind of deploy that base communications, the fiber that we know we're going to need, regardless of what kind of signals being transmitted. Make sure we have the electric distribution system there, regardless if we're going to have static or dynamic charging of the vehicles. Kind of those core pieces in place so we're not putting in infrastructure that's obsolete 5-10 years. Stakeholder buy-in has been another challenge. Not unlike any other economic development project, there is a bit of public education to talk to our local communities about what the benefit of this project is for them as far as bringing in new business and expanding and retaining existing businesses. And there's obviously some businesses there that are more of traditional manufacturers or traditional logistics companies. And it's important for us to educate them on the benefits of some of this tech-focused future innovation. From a regulatory standpoint, one of our challenges is that federal law prohibits the commercialization of the interstate highway system. So this limits our ability to put EV charging stations or solar arrays within traditional interstate highway right-of-way. What's nice about our project is we do have the Ohio Turnpike running through, and because they run based on toll revenue, they're excluded from the national highway system, and that provides us with some flexibility so we can deploy some of these technologies within their right-of-way in partnership with them. And last but not least, funding has been a huge challenge for us. We are an economically distressed region that's seen a lot of population and job loss over the last 5 to 6 decades. So while we applaud the federal efforts to have a bipartisan infrastructure law, and it's a great opportunity for us, these are extremely competitive funds, and most federal transportation funds have a 20% match requirements. Sometimes those are waived in rural areas like ours. But just piecing together enough funding to get these projects off the ground is a challenge for us. And with that, we thank you for your time and having us present today, and turn it back over to the moderator for any questions.
Thanks, Stephen and Emil. I appreciate that. Very informative discussion. Maybe we can, I don't see a lot of, I don't see any questions in the chat here. It looks like a number of people may be on lunch break, but I do have a few here in my own head or on my list that I wanted to ask you all. Maybe I'll go backwards first, starting with the folks from Eastgate. This is really exciting work that you all are doing, and the Aspire, I'm particularly interested in the Aspire partnership with the number of universities across the country that you mentioned. Is your initiative here in Ohio unique in that you're sort of the only non-university partner, or what's the difference between the presence of this activity in Ohio versus those other locations that you mentioned?
Yeah, so a couple distinctions with our project is that we are having collaboration between 2 states and 2 turnpike authorities, which makes it a little bit unique. And why that's unique is that as you look to monetize this charging of the vehicles, so at some point there's going to have to be some type of app or apparatus to charge people for having their electric truck or electric vehicle charged along the roadway. And just like tolls are collected now increasingly with the open road tolling, the easy passes, this is going to have to be coordinated across state lines and also with different electric utility companies. And we have several, we have one on the Ohio side, First Energy, and they go into PA, but there's several companies on the PA side. So that's going to make this a great pilot for deploying those technologies and commercializing them. And that's part of the reason that the Aspire Institute was interested in our project and set it apart a little bit from some others in the country. And we do have a bit of a freight focus and logistics focus versus some of the other projects that are more commuter-based.
Thanks, Stephen. Do you see that there's an opportunity for new startups coming out of, or new commercial enterprises coming out of this, and how, along what sort of technology threads do you see that occurring?
Yeah, I do think so. And, I kind of alluded to it a bit earlier with, us being in phase 1 now, and we're looking to find out how we can check those boxes for those big businesses and those new industries that come into the area. So really moving forward, working with our chamber and knowing, who's looking to come in. Ultium battery plant came in and is under construction, kind of finishing up now. That's bringing in a bunch of new employees and a new workforce. So, all these new technologies and new startups are really chomping at the bit and trying to find the location, and we're trying to set ourselves apart to be that spot in the country.
Gotcha, thanks. Good, well, so a couple of things I want to mention and ask of Dr. Jolley at Ohio University. One is, well, 2 things really. One is congratulations to Ohio University, and also to Kent State, who isn't in this session obviously, but in getting the Carnegie R1 Research Institution designation, bringing to 5 the number of R1 institutions now in Ohio. And the question here, Jason, is what kind of new challenges and opportunities do you see that designation and the related activity at OU presenting for the university and the projects that you're involved in?
Well, certainly that designation, I think, is a recognition of the solid work that folks here have been doing, and sort of basic research as well as applied research, PhD programs, and securing external funding, et cetera. I think everything we do is really about collaboration here, and it opens the door, I think, for more collaboration and more exploration of linking the work that the university does with our partners at the state and federal levels for funding support, but also other kind of programmatic support to try and move the region forward with the issues that we're facing. I mean, I think Russ alluded to some of this in his discussion of rural places. I think there is an opportunity potentially for our respective regions to tap into remote work for things like Intel, and seeing the university playing some role in helping to identify some of that. But we also have real challenges, particularly in Appalachia. Transition away from some of the coal economy as coal-fired power plants get decommissioned. EDA has been very beneficial in supporting some work around that and funding that effort. Broadband initiative, and certainly we're seeing the state make investment not just in Appalachia but in other places around that. So I think the Carnegie designation is helpful for demonstrating that OU has a long history of sort of public service engagement in many of these areas, but also we can help on the research side as well. So that's maybe a little convoluted answer there, Matt, but I think it helps. Anything we can do to raise the profile is important, but the work that we're going to do is still going to be collaborative as we try to move forward to address, a myriad of challenges, but also opportunities.
Yeah, and I just want to follow up with another question, Jason, on OU's activities in the innovation space. And as you know, Sterling Ultra Cold, the example that you used earlier, is also a recipient of funds from the JobsOhio Growth Capital Fund. And we, of course, JobsOhio collaborates with the Innovation Fund of the state of Ohio on that and other projects. But as an ESP, an entrepreneurial support program there at OU, how are your programs there at the ESP helping to identify promising new startups and helping them to grow?
Sure. So I think that occurs a lot of different ways. And I don't work directly with some of the business support activities or work directly with tech growth on any of the ESP support work or venture work. But again, it's part of our ecosystem. So I'll give the best answer that I can to that. I mean, one of there are multiple entryways into getting support from tech growth. And again, they often support companies with technical assistance, advice, consulting, even if they ultimately don't end up, taking an investment. So some of those come through the Ohio University's Innovation Center, which is a business incubator on campus, which has been award-winning and recognized. So some of those come through startups that maybe get cultivated at the Innovation Center, whether they come from the university or elsewhere. And then when they're ready for that level of investment, they get that follow-on support from tech growth. Other times they come through angel networks, or they come through working with many of the communities. And so, someone has an idea, a business, and it looks like it's tech-led, which would have to be some sort of tech-led for it to qualify for tech growth. And what I think is very, very beneficial for us is we also have the Small Business Development Center. We have the social enterprise ecosystem. So there are a whole lot of touch points if someone has got a viable business idea, particularly if it looks like it might be growth oriented, that even if it doesn't match with tech growth, there's other ways that we can support it within the school. And one of the things that we're always stressing is we want to look at this as an ecosystem and not just as, a siloed set of activities. And we see our value as drawing the connections kind of across that ecosystem, because someone could perhaps enter at one point or have a certain touch point, but really need to be funneled somewhere else to reach their growth potential. And so, a lot of different entry points. And of course, all ecosystems are somewhat challenging to define and to display and to talk about. But I really think building out that ecosystem is what makes us viable, and it allows for a whole bunch of different entry points for prospective companies.
Great, thank you. And Dr. Mills, I wanted to ask you, there's been a lot of discussion by, well-recognized authors like Richard Florida and others about the value of placemaking in economic development. And I wonder, given the programs that you have there, supported by EDA and others, to help smaller communities sort of make a more livable place for workers and the general population. What thoughts do you have about connecting placemaking to the innovation processes that we've been talking about here today?
Yeah, no, I think, Matt, that's a great question. I think there are several ways that I see the overlap, and actually JobsOhio's Vibrant Communities program is another one. I think that several of the communities that we work with can in some cases have already taken advantage of. But for us, I think it's really educating a lot of our communities that it only takes one really successful innovator or entrepreneur to really build the local cluster in your community. I think for a long time, a lot of our communities, at least in Northwest Ohio in the rural sense, this is definitely different than what Jason has done in Appalachia. For us, everything's been thought of as, well, the large scale employer of 250 to 300 folks, a manufacturing or logistics firm is really going to be the town or the city's path to prosperity. And I think a lot of our communities are recognizing now that they don't have the labor force to really supply the jobs that they need in a lot of those cases. So how do you make your place better for that? But also sort of as a side benefit, or frankly, in some cases, the main focus of some of these communities is really to build an entrepreneurial and innovation ecosystem in their small community, by building, either a spinoff of a local manufacturing company in some cases. For what I see up here in Northwest Ohio in our innovation side, is that there's a ton of innovation taking place in our companies in rural communities, but that takes place in-house. The question is, that I've wrestled with for a number of years, is how do we get those people out of the company to start and provide them with the tools, capital, et cetera, necessary to then start a spinoff company, and then also make them want to keep that spinoff company in Ohio, right? By providing a place that they can raise family in an affordable way, a political climate that's welcoming to folks from different backgrounds in a lot of cases. I'm thinking those are some of the key things that how I see the linkages between placemaking and innovation.
Yeah, I think that talent link is really key. Using places as anchors to attract and retain talent. So thank you for that. This is really, I think, this is probably the last question that I have. I don't think there are any more in the chat here, but this is really for everyone. And so maybe we can just go in the order of the presenters. Russ, maybe you can go first, but this is really about kind of future state. What are the aspirations of your respective centers, for this, say the next 1 to 5 years, and how can state and federal partners help better support those goals?
Yeah, for us, what I would like to do, and what I've sort of spoken to folks about, is really creating an extension service of our organization. As we get the number of applications that come in for our R3 program, it's so clear to me that the capacity in our rural communities and I think the folks from Eastgate mentioned this too, right? A lot of our communities are in a place where they don't have the initial capacity to apply for some of these large federal grants, or to even think about a feasibility study for an incubator, let's say, in a smaller community. So that capacity is the gap I think we're missing in a lot of cases in Ohio. I think EDA has an interesting new program that's coming out, their Recovery Corps. And if you haven't looked into that, I think that's a great, it's in its very nascent stages, but I think this is going to be a program that will benefit Ohio greatly in the next 3 to 5 years. So for us, it's really about building capacity in our communities to take advantage of some of these trends in terms of innovation, and really help them plan and think through how they can position themselves best when they decide they want to go in a different direction.
Dr. Jolley, can we go to you next?
Sure. So, there are a lot of opportunities here in Appalachia. Governor DeWine and Lieutenant Governor Husted been very instrumental along with our state legislators in, a $500 million commitment to Appalachia. So that's a substantial amount of investment in the Appalachian Ohio region. I think I see the school as playing some role in thought leadership around that, particularly, when we're asked formally, but even informally with the communities that we work with, to ensure that we're kind of making the investments that really are transformational and are innovative, and in my mind are market facing. Right? People can have ideas, but I think it's important that they be market facing and they look to either capitalize on existing markets or create new markets where one might have some comparative or competitive advantage. So I think that anytime you can leverage, that's important. So what we've been successful at is leveraging state funding that we get through the school with JobsOhio funding to bring in federal dollars from EDA, for example, to support the region. So I think, the leveraging federal and state dollars to try to make an impact in the region is important, and doing that in a way that is thoughtful, that is meeting emergent challenges that communities are facing, and the school plays an important role in that. And one reason I think we've been successful is we share in that investment. So many of these projects that we're talking about, dollars may be flowing to the school, but we're largely passing them through to our economic development partners so that there's money in the ground in these communities, and it's not dollars that come and stay in Athens. It's being spread around the footprint that we serve. So, and lastly, I guess I would say, Matt, is there are a lot of technological innovation and change that's occurring. And we're thinking about, people are talking about electric vehicles, and there's unmanned aerial systems, and we are talking about green energy. And what we know is that technological change innovation can be disruptive. And throughout its history, rural places often get left behind. And that technological innovation can just further increase the disparity in income and wealth and economic opportunity. And I see us playing a role here at Ohio University in trying to ensure that Appalachia doesn't get left behind, that we play some role in working with our partners to ensure we can capture those opportunities and find a fit and a place for Appalachia within this broader innovation space.
And I would just add to that, jumping on Russell and Jason's comments, that entrepreneurial ecosystem is critical for us. We have an EDA-funded economic recovery strategy that identified 4 target industries: logistics and distribution, EV and battery storage, additive manufacturing, and IT as focus areas for us. And a big part of that strategy was diversification. We used to be all steel mills. We used to be all internal combustion engine with Lordstown GM plant. So trying to diversify, trying to embrace those future technologies, and making sure we sell this transportation initiative as a true economic development initiative, so that we're going to the different agencies like EDA, like Appalachian Regional Commission, Department of Energy. So we're capitalizing on each and every opportunity to bring dollars into the region, because even though we are a metro, we're a small metro compared to our big 3 Cs and some of the other cities, even like the Akrons and Daytons of Ohio. So it's important for us to try to capitalize on the opportunities when they arise. And I think the big challenge for us is sustainable long-term funding. A lot of the things we're chasing now are EDA Good Jobs Challenge or EDA Build Back Better. And those were all tied into COVID relief. So those aren't going to be around in a couple of years. So we need to make sure that our partners are innovating and finding ways to have sustainable economic partnerships.
Yeah, just to add to that real quick, as Dr. Mills kind of alluded to a little bit, our biggest challenge with our local communities is that match. Everything requiring that match is difficult for them. So the support of our elected officials is important. As a planning agency, we've shown the success, which goes a long way. And we like to operate under, plan, study, implement. So what we spoke about today with our live zone, we're in that study phase. So being able to attack that hurdle of that local match, showing that plan study helps us implement. So that's the biggest hurdle for us.
Great, thanks. Well, I think that brings us to time. I want to thank all the panelists as well as the participants who stuck with us through their lunch break.